How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Envision Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Portillo, joined as always by my lovely co-host and wife, Lynn Portillo.
Hey, guys.
Welcome back. We're excited to have you for another week. We hope everyone shattered their limits and ascended this past week. Lynn, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Ready for this episode.
Okay. How was your week overall this past week?
It was long. Rhaegar is not sleeping at all. I feel like every time I'm saying it's just slowly getting worse.
Yeah.
I don't know what is happening, but Rhaegar just doesn't want to sleep. So I'm pretty tired today.
He's been having most likely pain from his teeth growing. Mm-hmm. I know his top 4 teeth and bottom 2 teeth are like really out now, and you can see another one starting to peak. So he's definitely in that stage where he gets woken up because his mouth hurts or his tummy's hurting.
Because we're experimenting with foods and giving him stuff. But last night, I swear he woke up like 6 times, just up until like 1. And then he finally fell asleep fully from 2:30 to 5:30.
Yeah, I was up for a little bit of that, and normally I'm not. Normally I'm asleep, but I was up, and he saw that I was awake, and I think that gave him energy because then we started playing for about half an hour. I don't know if Lynn was happy about that, but eventually when he fell asleep for that little brief period of time, I fell asleep and didn't wake up until the morning, or I guess later that day. It was already morning. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's growing. He's having growing pains, if you will. But it's still such a joy to see him grow and develop further every single day.
It is. Have you ever had growing pains? Do you remember them as a kid? Because I had horrible growing pains to where I would wake up crying and it would be in like my shin. You know, like my shin splint feels like?
Yeah.
It'd be like that really badly, or my shoulder area.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, but I had really bad ones. So maybe he's going to get my genetics of really bad pains, because my parents had to like mash up aspirin in a spoon and put like orange juice or something for me to take it just in the middle of the night to be able to even sleep because of growing pains.
You know, now that you bring that up, I don't remember. I don't remember. I'm short, I guess you could say. I'm your average height. So
you just didn't grow.
I just didn't grow. I have Lynn always jokes around that I'm disproportional. I have shorter legs, but I have a longer torso.
He does.
So I'm like 5'9", about-ish, 5'8", 5'9". And yeah, so I don't think so.
That's okay. Well, I have never had really long legs and arms, so maybe that's why.
It could be, but I never had a moment where, I guess I would hear it with family or with friends, but they're like, "Oh, I haven't seen you in a year, and you've gotten taller, you've gotten bigger." But I think that's something that we all say when we see people that we haven't seen in a while. But it was never out of the norm where, I have friends or people that I know who I hadn't seen in many years, and last time I saw them, they were here, and then you see them again, and they're like here, and you're like, whoa, like you got tall. Like it wasn't, I never got a reaction like that. So
yeah, I can definitely see how, Oscar, your brother, huge difference. You can see from photos this year to the next. Yeah. You definitely had like a progressive growth. Yeah.
I don't know where that height comes from. If I would have had his height, I would have played D1 football. That's what held me back. That's what I tell myself. Yeah. But no, we won't go into that part of my life. But he's definitely blessed with height, and I'm jealous of it. So yeah.
Well, hopefully Rhaegar doesn't get my growing pains. I hope he has no memory like you, because mine were rough. I remember it even to these days, certain actual evenings where it was horrible.
That's terrible. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So what if that's what he's having though? Because he's in pain.
It could be.
Horrible.
It could be. He's definitely getting taller. When we put him close to our friend's baby, who is a couple months older than him, they're about the same height. Oh my gosh. They're about the same size. So he's definitely. And then when we just had his 9-month checkup last week, he was pretty much above average on everything as far as percentiles for weight, height, or size, length.
His head has caught up with his body, though.
It did, yeah. His head.
It's not in the 90th percentile anymore. I'm so proud of him.
It dropped down, and so it's funny because after we got the report of he was like in the 75, 76 percentile, something like that, I was going through old photos on my phone of when he was born and when he was 2 months old. And you can see, like, his whole body was so disproportioned because of how big his head was. And so I'm happy to see happy to see my son's caught up. His body's caught up to his head.
Yeah. It's all like the length and size match now.
Yeah. He got the big head from. I don't even know if he got it from. Okay, I have a big head, but my sister has a bigger head than I do. Actually, your dad has a bigger head than I do. So
he just was unlucky on all sides.
Yeah, he's just unlucky on all sides. So it is what it is. Sorry, Rhaegar, and sorry any future brothers that he has.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
I was gonna ask how you are doing and how your week is, because I'm really bad about asking that.
Oh no, I appreciate you asking. I mean, my week's been fine. It's been busy on many sides of it. I do have a, what would you call it, an accountability check-in, or I guess we'll call it that. I'm checking in here. So last week I said that I was going to start, well, 2 episodes ago, I guess I would say, I said that I was going to start my fitness routine again, and then I didn't. And then I said it last week that I was actually going to start, and I did, to an extent. Not ideally how I would have liked. I haven't hit the gym yet, but last weekend, every single day that I was off, I took a 4-mile walk. And I walked all of our dogs. I walked, by myself. We walked together. We walked with Rhaegar in his stroller. So it felt really good to get that amount of mileage in, consistent on a daily basis. And then as the week started with work, the only day that I didn't walk at least a mile was Monday. And so I felt really, I feel really good right now. I feel really accomplished this morning. I woke up, went on a mile walk, and then I went on another 1.5 mile walk to 2-mile walk a couple hours later. So I'm about 3 miles in for the day. But yeah, it feels really good. I'm excited to start small, right? And then I'm a big believer in making one good decision. And then having, I guess, small wins is what I'm trying to say. Having a small win, making one good decision, and then having those compound throughout the day.
Making your bed.
Yeah, like starting the day, making your bed. So, I feel really good right now. I feel very motivated to continue on this fitness journey, which that's the funny part. Not necessarily that we're talking about motivation today, but the older I get, the more I do realize that motivation should not be the reason why you do things or you don't do them. It should be the discipline and the consistency, right? If you want to get somewhere, if you want to improve in any aspect or in any area of your life, there's days where you're not going to feel like doing it. I mean, we'll just take cold plunging, for example, because that's the one thing I've been very consistent in. I'm at 120 something days, I think, something like that, straight that I've cold plunged. And what I've learned through that is there's days that I don't want to do it. There's days that I get up or it's the afternoon and I don't want to get in. It's cold outside like today. It's been raining. It's a little windy. It's a little cold. And it's not my first thought in my head to say, you know what, let's go get in the cold plunge and let's suffer. But even through that mind block, I still go ahead and do it. And I go back and think about when we both were very good on our fitness routine and we were going to the gym daily. Yeah, there was days that we didn't want to get up, and there was days where the bed was super cozy and we were warm and we didn't want to, do it. But that little voice inside you, there's two voices, right? The little voice inside says, stay cozy, you don't have to do it today, you can take today off. Or there's that other voice that says, no, like, you got to get going. Yeah. And thankfully we listened a lot more to that second voice versus the first voice. But then when we started going downhill or on a downward spiral trajectory from our fitness journey, we started listening more to that first voice. And I learned that once you hear that voice and listen to it the first time, then the second time there's a little less guilt. You're like, yesterday was fine, I can take another day off. And then you take that second day off, and then before you know it, it's been 3 days, and then before you know it, it's been 2 months, or in my case, it's been about 6 months. Actually, it hasn't been about 6 months. It's been about 3 months since I haven't hit the gym. But it all starts with it all starts with a decision. And you either need to make the right decision to continue going and stay consistent and stay disciplined, even if you don't want to do it, or you make the bad decision and it starts you on a downward trajectory.
Yeah. And it's hard because you don't see the consequences of those choices right away. Like one bad meal. Oh, we're just out having fun with friends. But then you hear that voice and you're like, oh, one more meal won't hurt. One more meal won't hurt. Then you have to go to the doctor in 6 months and you've been eating 3 bad meals a week instead of maybe one or none at all. And now you have really bad blood tests. And you're sick and you didn't even realize that the effect of having those bad meals slowly adding up. Same with the gym.
Yep.
You don't notice it on your body just like you don't notice going right away on your body. It takes a good 6 weeks to notice anything at the gym. And you don't go a couple days, oh well, you're fine. I still have abs. Then you don't go maybe for a week and you go back, oh, I'm struggling to lift this poundage. Then you go back and you can't even squat like the bar because you haven't gone. And so the consequences are so slow that you don't think about it, and that's why it's so easy to revert back.
Correct. And I think to that point, what really showed it to me in a accelerated time frame is when I tore my ACL the first time and I had to go through ACL reconstructive surgery. Muscular dystrophy is a real thing, especially on a surgery like that. So I remember prior to surgery, what my surgeon had said is, let's strengthen your leg to as close as possible to where you had it before the injury. It's going to make your injury recovery time better, and it's just going to be better in the long run for you. So I said, cool, let's do it. So I did physical therapy for, I think, 3 months. And then I was going to go under surgery, and then COVID happened, and then I had to wait a couple months to get back in. Literally the the day before my surgery is when COVID became a national pandemic and everything shut down. And, we all know what happened there. And anyways, my surgery got postponed 2 months. So I did rehab for 3 months, or physical therapy for 3 months. Then I was going to do my surgery, had to wait. I continued doing physical therapy by myself. And then I went into surgery. But I remember coming out of surgery, I was injected with anesthetics. And so I was kind of like lifting my leg and felt good. I'm like, cool, like I can still lift my leg. I can move my toes. Like that was my biggest concern going into the surgery was just that my nerves or something was going to get messed up. And I wouldn't be able to, I really thought like worst case scenario, I wouldn't be able to move my leg or there was something like that would happen. It definitely crossed my mind. But after the anesthesia wore off, the following day, so not the day we went home, but the following day, I remember trying to raise my leg and I could barely lift it. And then by the second day at home, I couldn't even lift it anymore. Like I had to lift it with my hands or have someone help me, or I would put my other leg underneath it and try and like kind of pick it up that way. And it was a whole new process that I've never had to experience with, or that I never had to experience before. And so, I mean, I think it relates, but to your point, if you're not using that muscle, you lose that muscle. We've talked about this before. It's like with language or with a skill, if you're not practicing that skill, and you lose it.
And this I think can actually go into our topic for today, because we're going to be discussing boundaries, as we said in the last episode, but to have boundaries, you have to be disciplined about them, which is really hard, which we'll get into the conversation, because if you aren't and you get lax on them, then people take advantage of those boundaries and push them, and then your boundaries are gone. And it's slow too, just like all, working out and stuff. It's slow to where all of a sudden you're like, how did I get in this position? Which is what we kind of dealt with moving back with our boundaries. Yeah,
definitely. I think that this topic is an important topic for us, because we continue to learn more about not only our personal boundaries, our boundaries as a married couple, but our boundaries with everyone else in our lives, family, friends, colleagues, whatever, any person that we know, we've learned and continue to learn a great deal about boundaries, right? And so, I'm excited to talk about it. It's going to be one of those conversations, one of those topics where I think we're going to go pretty deep, pretty transparent, pretty honest, and I'm for it. So just, spoiler alert or disclaimer alert, I don't know, whatever it is there. But no, I mean, we do believe, here at Envision Growth, we believe that to get to that next level of your relationship and have fruitful relationships and prosperous relationships, you need to be very good at self-assessing, being self-aware, and then understanding what pivots you need to make to make changes, whether it's on yourself or whether it's helping someone else, influencing them to make those changes. I think life is a game, and it's about changes, right? And so some changes are definitely easier than others. But so saying that, let's get into it.
So I have notes because I'm me. Alex doesn't, because he's Alex. So if I'm looking down, I'm looking at my notes because I have some verses in here. I have some thoughts. But I think we just want to set off as for you. Oh, did you have something you want to say?
I was just going to pause there. To that comment, you can see, and that's an area of opportunity. I'll be transparent from now. That's an area of opportunity for me that I need to improve on, is have notes, do some research, do some studying, to be better prepared, to better serve you guys. I admit that. Lynn, she's got the Bible there. She's got her notebook. She's someone who is very note-driven and task-oriented, as opposed to me. I think there's some truth in this, but I think that there's also a... hypocrisy is not the right word. It's a false sense of success, if that's the right word. And what I mean by that is I'm very good at speaking organically and things just like, I'm good at flow. Like when we're having conversation, it's a lot of flow for me. And then I try not to prepare too much, because I feel like if I prepare too much, then I just stick to that script.
And it's robotic and you're stressed.
And then it's robotic. It's not natural for me.
Yeah.
For me, it's natural to just, hey, pick up a conversation. You say something that intrigues me. I ask a question about it, and then we go back and forth.
Like last week. We were supposed to talk about boundaries last week,
Correct.
But Alex just got flowing and the conversation was really good.
Yeah, so we made that pivot and we talked about death and, the way how death just impacts your life, right? And how it can impact your life. So we got into that subject just from doing our intro conversation. So that's where I really thrive, just organic, free-flowing conversations. But where I say it's a false sense of success is I feel like when we go back and we re-listen to the podcast and our advice, I always sit there with a sense of, I could have done this better, or I could have said this better, or I could have framed this a different way. And hindsight, it really is because I don't take enough time to prepare. Because I can still be organic and I can still have a free-flowing conversation, but have an idea of what is the point I'm trying to make, or what are the tips that I'm trying to share. What is it that I'm trying to...
So others can get something out of it.
Correct. So others can get something out of it. So that's something I need to work on in the next as we continue to grow in the next couple of episodes. You'll see more stuff on my side of the desk.
I'll teach them how to have paperwork out and ready for the discussion.
Yeah. This is where we work. We're opposites. We really are. She's more introverted. I'm more extroverted, which is ironic because as the older I get, I prefer to be more introverted than I prefer to be extroverted. So go figure. And
Good.
I think you're a little bit better at speaking in public and speaking, being extroverted than you were
and sharing
when you
my
first met.
thoughts
And sharing
and
your
stuff.
thoughts. So I think that we've grown and adapted and we've learned from each other, which is exciting.
Yeah. I think we definitely took different aspects of each other's personality and tried to implement them into our own. So I'm a lot better about going out and hanging out with people too. I just get a little tired at the end of the day and need a good couple days break from people.
Yeah,
Whereas you
definitely.
could party it out all week, all night.
Yeah, I get that. I haven't partied in a while, so.
Hey, hanging out with friends is always a party. It doesn't have to actually be party.
That's true. It's having fun.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Perfect. So let's do it.
Okay.
What are we talking about today?
So we are discussing boundaries, and I wanted to just open it up to the floor for you first. Is what are boundaries to you, and how have you recognized the boundaries we need to set since coming home?
That's a loaded question. So let's break it down.
Okay.
Let's start with what are boundaries to me?
Okay.
That was one of the questions, right?
Yeah,
or that was
the
part of the
first
question. Okay.
That's the most important part, I guess, to start it off.
So that's a very good question, and it's a little difficult to answer because I'm still working through that. I would say I'm better at my personal boundaries now than I have in the past, and to a default or to a fault, I do tend to sometimes revert back to old habits. What do I mean by that? And Lynn is very good at calling me out about this, so she'll probably call me out about this today. The older I've gotten, I've learned to prioritize what's important for me in terms of my family, goals, tasks, whatever. What's important to me. I've learned to prioritize that a lot more than I have in the past. But where I still struggle have struggled in the past and still struggle currently is accommodating others to not ruffle feathers or to not make someone feel bad or to not look bad myself.
But
I'll be
accommodating them over
overly accommodating
you and your family, aka me.
Yes. And this is where I mean she's going to call me out. So yes, there have been times where, perfect example, and probably the most common example, we have been invited to go to a gathering, to go to a birthday, to go somewhere. We've been invited to go somewhere. And I'm better now about checking with Lynn, like, hey, do we have something scheduled for this day? And then she'll say yes, she'll say no. Before I would just say yes and be like, yeah, we'll be there. And then I go tell her and she's like, hey, like, we have this, and that to do that day. And I'm like, we'll figure it out. And then I would just, kind of be very sporadic like that. Now I'm better about checking in. But to the example, we'll say, okay, yeah, we can make it. We'll go. And then her and I talk about it. We're like, hey, let's go for, X amount of time. We do got to do some other things now with the baby. It's also changed a little bit. So we try to keep that in mind. But then we're at the event. And let's say that we've said we're going to stay for 2 hours. 2 hours come by and I look at my watch and I'm having a good time. I think Lynn's having a good time. And then those 2 hours shortly turn to 3. And then they turn to 3.5. And then by the time we get to 4, either Lynn wants to go, Rhaegar now I guess, is we'll get fussy and we gotta put him down for his nap. And so I struggle with prioritizing my family and us needing to leave, or am I the first person who's going to leave and be that, be that person, I guess.
Yeah.
Or I guess in my mind, I don't want them to feel like I'm just trying to get out the door and not be there.
Yeah.
And so that's where I still struggle. Because at the end of the day, and I mean this full-heartedly, I'm not trying to hurt anyone's feelings. I'm appreciating that we were invited or that we're there. And sometimes I do get caught up in the moment. But I do recognize that, especially if we have other things to do or we have other obligations or time constraints that we need to address, I need to be very good about setting that boundary, sticking to that boundary, leading my family when it's time to go, and being unapologetic about it. Because at times I think sometimes we can overthink things, right? I think that we start putting ourselves in that other person's mindset and we're like, oh, what are they going to think? Are they going to think that I'm a terrible friend? Are they going to think that I'm not in it to win it anymore, or whatever?
Even like for that kind of example, thinking, we're not good parents because we are accommodating our kid for leaving and stuff, which is something that we always strive to, have our kid adjust to our schedule and not the other way around.
Yeah.
But also, our baby has boundaries too.
Yeah.
And we have to respect those. He can't tell us these things. Yeah. He only can experience it, and it's our responsibility as good parents to be like, okay, you're not 15 years old. You can't just stay out till midnight partying. That's not a responsible parent. If I was a kid, you see all the kids at these parties sleeping on chairs and stuff. Once in a while, all the family's coming together, but also that's not a good habit to be instilling on them. Yeah. So I think it's important to acknowledge that your boundaries leading your family, those in the family also have their own boundaries. I do.
I want to clarify so there's no confusion when she means by people sleeping on chairs. So in the Hispanic culture, it's not uncommon to go to a wedding, a quinceañera, a baptism, or just a party like that. And, the foldable chairs, right? They're all usually in a row for people to sit down. It's not uncommon to see a child, not a baby, okay? Typically not a baby, but definitely a toddler, 4 or 5 years old, passed out on those chairs while the party's going on. The reason why I say it's common is because I've seen it and I've experienced it because I was that child at one point. So that's what she means by children sleeping on chairs.
It's just an example because you want to make sure everyone has their own personal boundaries too. So as a family, we need to take each other's boundaries into consideration. I'm an introvert. 5 hours at someone's house is a lot of time for me.
Yeah.
And based on my priorities and stuff, I love hanging out with friends, but they're not going to be my top priority in things. So that, it's important to acknowledge everyone has those personal boundaries, and then your boundaries as a family. There's just so many important boundaries to set.
There's different levels to it. There's different levels to it. And so you asked, what do I think about them? I think that they're important to have. And I think that the sooner you recognize what your boundaries are, the better, right? And then from there, the key is sticking to them, right?
And that's where that discipline has to come in.
And that is where that discipline has to come in. And you can't, they should be non-negotiables for the majority of them, right? If someone, what's an example that I can use? I guess sticking to the party. If we have two obligations because of mismanagement or misplanning by my part or our part or whatever.
Yeah, it's not always you.
Thank you. Is it, we have to think about the other person as well, or the other commitment that we made. It's not fair to them, in my opinion. It's not fair to them that we are affecting their time because we couldn't keep our priorities or our boundaries straight with other engagements, right? And so that's where it can get very tricky. So I'm going to say this now, and I'm sure it's going to come up a little bit later, but one of the biggest lessons I still learn, and I still have difficulties with learning and grasping, is no is a complete sentence, right? You don't have to give explanations. If someone invites you out or someone invites you to do something and you say no, that's it. Period. No, capital N-O, period. Like, you don't have to give any further explanations than that. And it may be awkward. It may seem uncomfortable. But if it is, then I think that there's some self-reflecting you need to do on yourself and on that relationship. How strong is that relationship that if you tell a friend or a family member no, that you can't attend a party or you can't do this event or you can't do, whatever, how strong is that relationship is if the moment you say no, they are like, okay, well, I don't want to talk to you anymore, or you've changed, or whatever, right? So that's where you have to do that self-evaluation for yourself and for that relationship. But I've learned that no is a complete sentence. I continue to learn that because there are times where I say, no, we can't do that, and then I go on a 2-paragraph explanation as to why.
So many details, which I'm bad about it too, and I think more so it makes me feel like I'm being rude by saying no to people. I think I've always been raised as a yes man kind of person, and that's where both of us really would get worn down even before we moved, is because we would say yes to everything.
Especially me.
Yeah.
I'll admit it, especially me.
He gets a little excited and wants to, but it's like because you want to be there for everyone. You're very supportive. You are always the number one person for your friends. You're their cheerleader. You want to be able to help grow them, support them in any way, which is great. But saying no is really beneficial especially for me, my own health and well-being, because I am not good at boundaries. My opinion of boundaries is they are completely necessary, and I'm the one who has to do that self-assessment of boundaries because I am not good at maintaining them, because people say empath because you feel everyone's emotions, but I just absorb everything that's going on around me, and that wears me out. So the ability to say no would be a great skill I wish I could have.
I think you're better about it now. I think that there was a change I saw in you once Rhaegar was born. You are very intentional with your time, and you're very intentional with your boundaries, and you call them out, not only to myself, but to others, in a loving way. Like, you're never rude about it. But if there's something that you just don't want to do, or it doesn't meet your priority list, or whatever the reasoning is, you're very good about saying, hey, no, I don't want to do that, or you go. Like, if it's something that I want us to do together, she's like, no, you go, I don't want to do that. And I've learned to be okay with that. I've learned that it doesn't mean that she loves me any less. I've learned that it doesn't mean that she doesn't want to spend time with me. It's just not something that's on her priority list. She would rather be at home with Rhaegar or doing something else. I know that you've picked up sewing recently, or baking. You've been baking for a while. So there's things that, just like I have things that I like to do by myself and in my free time or whatever, there's times that there's things that you like to do as well by yourself. Or you, even if we like to do them together, you still prefer that space versus whatever we're doing. And that's fine.
Yeah. And I think that's important because that's us setting our own boundaries of, like, within the relationship. We have our marriage boundaries, with others and stuff, but also our personal boundaries with each other of making sure that, hey, I still want time to bake and cook dinner, and I am starting to sew. I'm going to try an apron this week, and I'm excited about it. So updates on that.
She's done sorry.
You're good.
I'm going to say this. She's done a really cool Pokemon skirt. The
did.
original, the OG 150 Pokemon. She did a Pokemon skirt, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Yeah, a while ago.
It's one of my favorite pieces of clothing she has. And she's not afraid to wear it out on dates, which is what I love.
Yeah. So I want to be able to sew, but that's like a hobby that I really enjoy. Whereas Alex, he does a lot of other stuff like cold plunging. You don't see me doing those very much on Instagram anymore because, it was fun. I like supporting him. It was good for me like to process my emotions, but it's not a priority. That's his own thing that he can do, and he does it every day, and I support him from a distance. I will let Rhaegar watch him, but it's those boundaries that we keep with each other and acknowledging, and we never push each other to do anything. And I think that's really important, because a while ago in our relationship, we'd be like, no, you have to go to my family party. I was like that a lot. No, they're gonna think you're rude for not showing up, not coming. He'd push me to go hang out with friends and do things out at bars and stuff, and a lot of times I wasn't even of age, so I couldn't even do stuff or have fun with them, so it wasn't enjoyable for me, but we would be a little pushy about those boundaries and breaking them. But now I never feel guilty if I'm like, oh, I'm really not wanting to do that. Yeah. Is that okay? Like, I'm tired, I have chores to do. He never pushes me to do that, and I try not to push him either.
Yeah, I would say that the only thing I would add to that is that we do push ourselves. We do push each other. We do push our boundaries to be better, but we also know where that line is. Because I think it's healthy. Like, that's where I will either, I don't know if you want to call it contradict or challenge you in what you just said, but we do push each other. We do push our boundaries for something good, but we also know where that line is that, okay, she just doesn't want to do it right now, or she just doesn't want to do it at all, or I don't want to do it at all. And that's fine, right? And we've learned to understand that about each other and respect that about each other, which is great. I think that's important because it's helped us become closer. It's helped us become more in unison and be more intentional and just really enjoy each other's company and be each other. And yeah,
I think so too. Kind of moving into that about boundaries, because I think there's a lot of different types of boundaries out there, and we are currently working through managing those boundaries in different relationships. To you, what's been the hardest boundaries that we are currently working on setting?
Hardest boundaries that we have, okay. When Rhaegar, I mentioned this a little earlier, when Rhaegar was born, everything changed not only for you, but for me. I've always wanted to be a father. This may sound silly. I may have already said this actually, but this may sound silly. I've always wanted to be a father from a young age. I always dreamt about this day, about being a dad and growing, seeing my son grow up and playing with him and helping him and all this. Like, everything that I'm going through right now is a dream come true, and I'm living a dream. And I'm just very thankful for them, very blessed for that. And with that, I also thought about different ways that I wanted to raise my child and different values, different disciplines, different skills that I wanted to help instill and teach and grow in him, and things that I didn't want. And a lot of those things may have been things that I had a personal experience with. Not saying that I was ever, spanked or, I had my spanking here and there, but it was never like out of the normal. Yeah, it wasn't never anything out of the normal. Like, I love my parents very much.
I was grounded all the time.
But there were certain things that I saw them do, not bad things, not malicious things, right? They're very loving parents, but there was things that I, at that time of my life, needed, and maybe I didn't know how to communicate that with them, and they didn't know what questions to ask, so there was never that safe space, if you want to say that, for that kind of conversation. So I had to go, look for those answers elsewhere. Nothing really bad. Like, I'm not trying to say that I was out being a terrible kid. I wasn't. I hated getting in trouble, honestly.
I think everyone hates getting in trouble.
But what I mean by that is, I'll just give an example. And I love my parents very dearly. Everything that I'm about to say, I'm not trying to throw them under the bus or say that they're terrible. But we want to
be honest about our experiences as to what gives us our perspectives.
Correct. I saw my parents, like particularly my dad. My dad would always go to my sporting events. Never missed one. In fact, when I was before high school, like elementary or middle school, middle school and elementary school sports, he would even attend practices. Like I remember when I was playing football, he would attend some of the practice and he'd hang out. This one, when you're younger, like the SYFL Pop Warner type leagues, you're playing at parks or a different school. So he would always hang out. My mom, she wouldn't. And I always kind of thought that was interesting. Like she would go to my games from time to time, but a lot of times she wouldn't. And one year I asked her, I'm like, it was actually out of frustration. I'm not going to lie. We got into an argument and I said, well, you don't go to my games. Dad's always there to support me, but you're never there. And at that time in my life, I didn't understand why she said what she said. She said, well, I don't want to see you hurt. I don't want to see you get hurt. I'd say that's a boundary for her because she didn't want to see, football, tackle sport, contact sport. Like she didn't want to see me get hurt or me get injured or anything like that. I didn't know how to process that. I didn't know how to take that other than what I saw at that time was my mom doesn't love me enough to go see my sports.
Yeah.
And so for me, where I'm going with this is I saw things in my family. I saw things in my friends. I saw things in my extended family of things that I didn't want my son to go through, my children to go through. And so from an early age, I made those pivots and I said, I'm not going to be this person or I'm not going to do this when I have kids. Now, having a child, I would say that's the hardest boundary that we have to set.
So hard.
Is understanding that Lynn and I had this conversation with my parents, so I'll say it here. I told them one day, actually fairly soon after Rhaegar was born, I said, listen, I want to get something straight now, and I don't want this to hurt feelings. I don't want this to upset anyone, but I want to be very honest. Rhaegar is my son, meaning that Lynn and I are the parents, and you are the grandparents. That's all I want you to be. We're always welcome. We always welcome the advice you want to give us, but if we don't implement it, I don't want you to be upset. I don't want you to be hurt, but I want to be very transparent now that we are raising our children the way we want to raise them. And my expectation, I literally said this, my expectation is that we're all on the same accord. That way he has a solid foundation, strong foundation for his upbringing. I don't want him to hear no from mom and dad, but then come see grandma and grandpa, and in grandma and grandpa it's always yes. That's not what I want. And so if we can't respect that boundary, then we're going to have to reevaluate how this relationship is going to work. And it was one of the hardest conversations I had to have. But I thank God that he gave me the strength, the way I'm speaking at it right now, with this conviction, with this assertiveness, if you want to call it that, with this, what's the word? It's not what's the word I'm looking for. With the being straightforward. Like, this is how I was. I wasn't wavering. I wasn't nervous. Or when I was speaking, I was nervous inside, but I held it in. I was very straightforward because it dealt with my family, right? Protecting my family. And as a head of my household, I have to take that position of doing what's best for them, even if it's going to hurt feelings, even if it's going to upset parents or upset siblings or upset friends, whatever. I have to put my family first. And so having that conversation with my parents, it was tough. But I thank God that they were very open-minded and they said, listen, we understand. Like, you guys are the parents. Whatever you guys want to do, we're here to support, right? But at the end of the day, if that is what you want, we'll respect that. Now, have we done that? I would say 95% yes and 5% no. And the 5% isn't even bad, right? We've asked that they don't buy as many toys because we don't want to have a bunch of toys everywhere. And they help us with Rhaegar. We'll take them over and they'll help watch him. So they have toys for him there. And at first, I did get a little bit upset because I was like, listen, we said, like, let's not get any toys. But then Lynn and I thought about it and we're like, well, you know what? He's spending some time over there. If the toys stay over there, we're cool with that. And then they can buy them. But, so we had that conversation. We said, hey, thank you. We appreciate that. We're cool with it. But then I also kind of had that follow-up conversation as the toys started accumulating. And I said, hey, like, don't spend your money. Like, really, all he wants is to be with you. He just wants to spend time with you. He just wants to be in your presence. Just enjoy him, entertain him.
Yeah, and he honestly just likes water bottles over anything anyway.
Right now, yes, he does. Yes, he does.
it's just not a necessary thing, and we don't want him to also think that he can just get any new toy constantly. So they just appear out of nowhere.
Correct.
But the boundaries is really hard with just having that initial conversation and then following through.
Yes, but then, so with that right there, it's important to note that, okay, you establish a boundary, whether with yourself or with others. At the beginning, I think because the conversation is fresh, it'll be strong. If there's that mutual respect, it's going to be upheld. But then as the time goes, this is where the discipline comes in. Is you have to keep those boundaries in check and make sure, doing a check and balance, making sure that we're still on the same page. Because the last thing I want, I'll use that example, I'll take it further. The last thing I want is to then eventually resent my parents or blow up on them or have an argument with them because we didn't respect the boundaries. But it's also on me because I didn't do those check-ins, or I didn't say, hey, have those call-outs and say, hey, we agreed on this. We agreed that we weren't going to go overboard on the toys. Can we tone it back, right? So I think that all of that goes hand in hand, and it doesn't go away. You have to continuously have that maintenance on it.
Yeah, and I think another example, which is something that can move into not only the grandparents, but friends outside of that, like extended family, one of the biggest things has been technology. And I mean TV and phones. And why are you pointing to me?
She said TV, so I pointed over there. Well, wait, just wait.
So, he's going to call me out. But the reason is because with friends, it's a whole different dynamic. So we've been around like hanging out with our friends, with kids or without. It's honestly on both sides. We are in a technology-driven world.
Yep.
Everyone has phones with them all the time. They have iPads. They have TVs. Well, we don't want Rhaegar to be an iPad baby. To us, we'd rather him be outside and do stuff. We don't want him to really acknowledge a phone. We don't want it to be a form of distraction for him or entertainment. If we're at a restaurant, like, he has to learn, like we did when we were younger. You sit there and you're respectful. You can color. You can be a kid, but you're not just going to be staring at a screen. And that has been one of the hardest boundaries to maintain and deal with, because you're not just going to... The conversation Alex had with our parents, he's not going to go up and say that to a friend who has a kid and this is how they chose to raise their kid.
Correct.
So...
Because that's not our place.
No,
that's where I'll jump in. I'm going to jump in. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Good.
And I want to be very, very clear here. What we're sharing is our experience, right? It's our decision, our boundaries that the way we want to raise our child. We're not going to go and disrespect any friends or say anything towards them about what they should or shouldn't do. That's not our place. If they ask for advice, that's different, right? But we're not going to go and say, like the example you're saying, we're not going to go to a restaurant with a bunch of friends who all have kids, and then let's say all their kids are on their iPad. We're not going to be like, hey, is that all they do? Like, why are your kids on their iPad?
Yeah.
Like, can they interact? Like, no, that's not our place, right? And I think that a lot of us, if we're honest, right, if we're going to really be honest, I think a lot of us do have that judgment, or maybe even speak it out loud, when that's not necessarily what we're trying to say. What we're trying to say is that my mom said this to me, and I think this is a perfect time to put this in here. When I was going through, I grew up Catholic. When I was going through my confirmation, and we did our retreat, for all the participants, for all the students, their parents wrote them a letter. And both of my parents wrote me a letter. My dad's letter, I still have both of them. My dad's letter is the only letter he's ever written me, so it's a very, very prized possession of mine. My mom, this is, I think, her second or third letter that she's written me, and I have all of them, but it's still a prized possession of mine. But something that my mom said in her letter has stuck with me since I read it. She said, when you were born, it was the greatest blessing of my life. I was scared, I was excited, I was nervous, I was worried, but above all, I was happy. Happy that I had my son, happy that I had you. Unfortunately, there is no book that will teach you how to be a parent. You have to take what you see in others, the good and the bad, mesh it together, and make it your own. that's what we've tried to do with you. And I hope that we've done a great job. Know that I love you. Know that I'm proud of you. Love, Mom. To this day, I know every single word on that letter on both of them, because it impacted me so much. And so I've always kept that in the back of my head, is in anything in life, not just raising a child, but in my profession, and in myself, in my personal life, I try to learn painful lessons by not having to go through them. Mm-hmm. If I see others suffering, if I see others going through a painful lesson, I don't want to go through that. So I try my best to absorb, take in the information, and do things that I don't have to go through that. And so with that, that's what we're talking about is when we see others do things that maybe we don't agree with, we're not going to go and criticize them. It's not our place. We are going to take that information and say, okay, do we want to raise our child this way or use this information, or how do we want to use this information, and then go from there.
Yeah, I think it's really good that you say that piece, because with these instances where we are dealing with, cell phones and TV and stuff, some of which it's us, because
we're not perfect.
No, not at all. And the world we live in, it's hard to avoid those things. We have to, as you said earlier, pivot and see what could be beneficial with technology. We're not we don't want him to hate it or think it's terrible or not know how to use a computer. How is he gonna do anything in life? Have a job, have a career, be an entrepreneur, whatever he decides to do. So we're trying to figure out those boundaries between that.
Yep.
And I want to read 2 Bible verses that kind of relate to the idea of the world and social media, technology, that sort of thing. I think it kind of relates to it, of what God wants us to be focused on in boundaries. Is that okay? Before we keep continuing?
Please do.
Okay. So, let's read this first. 1 Corinthians 15:33. So I have I'm going to read what this Bible says, and then I have a translation, and it will relate to the next one I read. So, be not deceived, evil communications corrupt good manners. That translates to, do not be deceived, bad company ruins good morals. Which really relates to the concept of boundaries, because if you're around these things that can cause you to not keep them, it brings down your values and your morals that you are trying to instill on your kids, on your relationship, on your family. And if you have those influences like social media, always scrolling on your phone, being glued to the TV, not wanting to go outside, what we want Rhaegar to be doing, it can really inhibit you because you get caught into that bad influence.
Yep.
But what God says about that, to what happens if you do get caught into that net. Okay, this is going to be a little hard to understand because it's written funny.
It's because you got the King James Version.
But look how beautiful.
It is beautiful, but that's why I like either the New Living or the King James English Version.
I have some translations. So, ye adulterers and adulteresses, which it's fine. Know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. So it's really saying that you need to have boundaries with the world, because it will make you an enemy of God, because the world is not for God. The world is selfish, and it's always pro getting that next position, getting more money, being in power, when God's the one in power. So the world is never for God. And we need to not be for the world, because that creates that separation. And I think that's just a really important verse, because it shows how important it is to be setting boundaries. And we are trying right now to set those boundaries with Rhaegar as parents on what we want him to focus on, because we also want him to be connected with God and have that. But right now, that's really being shut down too across the world. Religion is being seen totally opposite, and it's kind of looked down upon for even wanting to pray or go to church and stuff. So I think that just shows a good example of why boundaries are important in our relationship, in all relationships with people, but also how you have to have those boundaries with all different forces. It's not just, friends here and there, it's the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very important, and I appreciate you sharing both of those, because I may misquote this one. Again, I'm still working on being better at the Bible, but there is a verse in there that says, though you're in this world, you're not of this world.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So to your point, yes, God created heaven and the earth, but there is another life that he's preparing us for through the Bible, through the lessons that Jesus left. There's a better world that he's preparing for us. And so we can't be solely focused on this world, right? We have to keep an eye looking to the world to come.
Yeah. And I think that's important because we also have that, we have free will.
Mm-hmm.
God gave us that.
Mm-hmm.
And though he created this world in perfection, we've had the free will through generations and generations to ruin that perfection.
Yep.
And the further we go, the further we're tainting God's original image, which is why when we go up to heaven, that's the everlasting life, the world that he prepared for us. Here, we're trying to do good of what God originally created.
Yeah.
We're trying to continue that on. But it's hard when we do have outside influences coming in, and just all the changes that happen. Everyone's their own individual. Everyone has their own thoughts and opinions. And those are why we need boundaries for ourselves on how we want to live and pursue God's will, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, I can see that. I understand that. Cool. No, I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. For you, I don't think you answered. You didn't get a chance to answer the first two questions.
We went into a lot of conversations.
Let me ask you, what do you feel has been the hardest boundary to set for yourself since we've been back?
I'm not good with boundaries, as I said. I'm not good at saying no. And I originally said that I get affected very easily energy-wise, I guess, from others. So my biggest boundary that I still need to set is being affected by everyone else's moods. So if someone's having a bad day and doing something that I don't like, or I'm having a lot of things going on at once, that right there sets me off. If I'm in too tight of quarters with people, I don't set those boundaries of, hey, I need my alone time to recharge because I'm tired, because I'm stressed, because I have a lot going on. I just let people, it sounds, I don't know how it sounds, but like people keep taking from me. I'm trying to give a lot, like make sure everything's done around the house, chores are done. I'm not hurting anyone's feelings in terms of maybe letting Rhaegar stay with them longer, that sort of thing. I worry too much about other people's feelings and not about my own, and then I don't set any boundaries to have that space, or just to be like, hey, I'm the mom, give me my son, or hey, I'm a mom and I'm tired and I don't need your attitude right now, and I get kind of on a downward slope of exhaustion. And then poor Alex, has to deal with me being stressed and overwhelmed. So he's coming home to a not happy Lynn, a not happy wife, which my goal is always, we said before, priorities is husbands first, not children. And when I'm having all these other things going on, like today is a great example. I got on my lunch break, I went downstairs, saw Grandpa with Rhaegar. I grabbed Rhaegar. I didn't even acknowledge Alex was down there. I was like, oh, hi. And I walked up and fed my baby. Like, I didn't even acknowledge Alex's presence at all. And that's because I was stressed. A lot was going on. I was getting frustrated with the people around me because it happens, especially when I get overwhelmed. Little things can get me annoyed and grumpy, and I can be rude, and I was like, I just want to be alone with my baby, so I just went and fed him and shut the door. So obviously still really working on trying to develop any possible boundaries in that respect.
Yeah, Yeah, I can see that. And I think that that's where it's important, because the way you answered it, basically you're just struggling with boundaries with everyone right now.
Yeah.
Right?
I guess.
So
Good way to put it.
I think the advice I would give is pick one, right? When you asked me the question, for me it was my parents, because it was the hardest conversation that I had to have, and it was the hardest boundary that we had to establish. I think if you pick one, and you don't have to, if you don't have one right now, it's not like you have to share, but I would say pick one and work at that. That's something that you've taught me. You've taught me to take tasks, make that list expert, make that list, and then, write out pros, cons, or a pro-con list, or just write out what are the boundaries that you're trying to establish, and then work your way through each one. Because if you look at everything, you're like, I need to have boundaries with me, with my son, with my parents, with my in-laws, with my, whatever, friends. It can get overwhelming. It can get overwhelming.
And then I don't want to be with anyone.
And I think that that's where you find yourself. So pick one relationship to work at and get better. And then once you feel that that one is where it needs to be, move on to the next one. That would be my suggestion.
And I feel like boundaries can even come with tasks as well, not just people.
Yeah.
So a lot of my boundaries are that to-do list. It has to be done every day. And I think that also becomes something to where I'd much rather be sweeping the floor, vacuuming, doing my chores, doing all this, than maybe just resting and laying in bed with Alex.
Okay. I was going to say, those are to me, those are comfort tasks. Yes, you have to get them done, but I think they're
used to avoid the main boundaries that I don't want to deal with.
I'm glad you said it and I didn't have to call you out.
I can call myself out.
So yes, I think that sometimes, not just you, but me and others, right? I think that we can, when we have to go through something really difficult or have a difficult conversation, it can be easy to revert back to comfort and avoid that, so you don't have to go through that pain. When in reality, you have to go through those challenges, you have to go through those difficult conversations if you want things to change, right? So again, don't make it so overwhelming. What is the famous saying? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So pick one thing and work towards that. And I think that you'll start seeing success. You'll start seeing traction. And as you get that traction, it's going to give you that motivation, and you're going to go and you're going to go. Or it could be like me. I think I do better when it's traction. It's a little bit more organic. It's a little bit more, I like it better. It's more polished. But if you get me to where I feel like my back's against the wall and I have to get it done, that's where a whole different side of me comes in.
Be really direct.
And I'm just
figure it out.
And I'm just more direct. And it could be great depending on the person, depending on the conversation, or it could do more harm, right? Because there are some people who, I like to say it this way. You can be direct, or you can tell someone that they're not doing what they're supposed to, they're not doing a good job in many ways, right? Some people, you can be just, hey, you're not doing a good job, and be direct. Some people, you have to kind of give them that influence and kind of, I don't want to say the word sandwich, not sandwich, but you have to take a more personable approach. Hey, I see you struggling here. I really want to see you improve. I want to help you get better. What are some of your pain points? How can I help you? And make it more about support. Some people, you have to show them the facts. Hey, you're messing up here, 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 and there. Here's the data.
Yeah.
Right? And then there's some people you have to say, hey, you're messing up here, and then give them that time to process. Just give them the facts, be empathetic.
I'm a processing person. That's a good example. Like, that's me. I need time to process anything.
Correct.
But he can be really direct with me, too. I just might cry a little.
Fair enough. But yeah, so you just have to give them that time to process. But yeah, anyways, to the point that I was making is, if I feel like I'm in that season or in that time frame, that my back's against the wall and I just need to get it done, then that boundary conversation or that boundary has to be set. It's a different conversation.
Yeah, but okay, yes, I should start with one person to try to set boundaries. But I think one thing that everyone probably struggles with in setting those boundaries is that there's a lot of things with boundaries that can be hard. The person won't accept it. you're afraid you're going to hurt their feelings, they might come back at you saying, hey, why, you never done this before, why now? So there's a bunch of variables to me that run through my head when I'm thinking, oh, I want to set this boundary. I'll use my dad as an example. He can get a little grumpy, and I can't handle a bad attitude. So I'll want to try to set that boundary, gently say, hey, could you try to be more positive? And he'll do it for a day. And then I'm busy, I'm tired, I haven't seen Rhaegar all day, and I come downstairs for water. I hear some negative energy downstairs. I'm like, hey, I thought you said you were going to have a better attitude. Well, that boundary, yeah, I'm setting it, but I'm not being gentle about it, and I'm pissed.
Yeah.
So there's different variables that I feel makes me scared to set boundaries because I didn't get a good response to the way I said that, obviously.
Yeah.
So that boundary was not made well because in the beginning I was gentle about it, but then it got too much where I was overwhelmed, tried to push it harder, and like you said, you can't really control how people
are going to
respond or react to however you want to set that boundary, which makes it really difficult. So it's your responsibility to set that boundary and not worry about the other person's reaction, which, as I said before, I care too much about people and what they think and how things are affecting them, which causes me struggles and I feel depleted with energy because I don't want to cause any of those issues, and that's the biggest thing is trying not to worry about their response. I can only control how I say it and how I respond.
Yep. And that's huge. I think you mentioned something that I want us to dive a little bit deeper, and then we can land this plane, as they say. I think that is the hardest part that a lot of people, including ourselves, struggle with, is how do you then go forward with a boundary when the other person you're establishing that boundary with is not receptive to it, or has an attitude to it, or just isn't bought in, right? So because of the perspective you brought up, you touched upon it a little bit, but I want us to explore it a little bit more. How do you handle, what are the things that you do in that situation?
When it's not working?
Yeah. When you've set a boundary and that other person is not being receptive to the boundary or they don't agree with it, what do you do from there?
Well, I did just use my dad as an example, but I think just in general, because I've had it come a few different ways, like whether it be a phone, someone handing Rhaegar a phone, that I'm just like, that's like my number one boundary. No one give him a phone. Or
be on your phone near him. I've had to learn.
You guys, when he was little, Alex would be watching him because he doesn't move. He just sits there like he's a baby. And he's just on his phone while Rhaegar's just laying in front of him. I took that phone, pregnancy hormones, and I threw that thing. I was like, what are you doing? Get off that. But, yeah.
She didn't say it in that nice way. Don't let her fool you.
Yeah, there were not some nice words, which I shouldn't have done. But also, respect my boundary.
And to your point, it was a boundary that we both agreed on, and I was not upholding it. Yeah. So, yeah, it happens.
I mean, I've done it too. It's hard, like when I'm nursing him and it's late at night. Sometimes I'm going to put my phone up behind him while he's nursing. But, yes. So, first, I try to pivot.
Okay.
So, the other day, one of our friends handed him a phone. And I was like, here, Rhaegar, look at this toy instead. It was like a water bottle. But, took that phone out really fast. I'm like, oh, he doesn't need that. It's okay. And tried to pivot from the thing to show, like, no, he doesn't need that. But I didn't outwardly say, hey, don't give my child phones. With family, I'm like, put your phone away. I'm pretty good about it with our family.
So I'm glad you said that because this happened when I wasn't there. And it's funny because I'm just finding out about this now. So why? Why would you not, if that's a boundary you've set, whether it's friends or family, why were you not comfortable right then and there to say, listen, that's a non-negotiable for me. I'm sorry.
Because I'm a coward.
Fair enough.
But it's hard. It's because I don't want to seem rude even though it's not rude. And that's why I keep saying, like, it's our responsibility to set these boundaries. If we're not doing it, they're not going to be set, because we cannot expect our friends and family to do something that we want and them to do, because that's not their normal thing. They always have their phones with them. Like, that's how they want to live their life. That's fine. I lose my phone like half the time, so I just don't comprehend that. I don't even know where it is most of the time. It's next to me now, but that's only because we needed it. But in that instance, I was like, oh no, it's okay, and I was polite about it. But in more direct situations, like I'll give my dad as an example, I had to take a step back, go upstairs, come back down, and then apologize for being rude and saying it that way, and then it's reestablished, like, hey, I just really would like it if you could try to be more positive, because I need that atmosphere right now.
Yep.
It's hard when there's a lot of negative energy around, and I get like worn out by it. So I reestablish that in a more respectful way. But that's also what's really important, is if you don't maintain those boundaries and you're getting overwhelmed because boundaries are being broken, if you don't address it right away, you'll end up, like Alex said, being backed into a corner and breaking it, and then you could come off actually as rude or say something you didn't originally want to say. When you set the boundary, you're not being rude, even though it makes you feel like you're inconveniencing people or something. Like you mentioned in the beginning, you wouldn't have those boundaries, and you care more about other people's conveniences than what your family needed, because you didn't want to cause a problem or seem rude or like you're inconveniencing people. But you're not in the long run if you set those boundaries originally. But if you wait, like I do, because I'm a big baby and afraid to have those conversations, then it all comes out in one go, and it might not come out the way you wanted it to come out, not come out like what you actually need, because it's going to sound aggressive and harsh and kind of a last resort thing, which is what I need to practice.
Okay. I mean, it's all very valid points, because I can see in that situation, and I apologize that I wasn't there either, but I can see in that situation where if you're not comfortable with having that kind of discussion, that you aren't going to be as direct. And I don't think that there is necessarily what you did wasn't bad, is what I'm trying to say. I think that given the situation, you still stuck to your boundary. You just found the best way for you to have that conversation, to avoid the conflict.
To avoid the confrontation.
And it is what it is. It's fine. But I think that what I want to touch there, I think it's very healthy for us, or you as a parent, that if you've set that boundary, again, I said this earlier, it's okay to say, hey, I appreciate it. You're not being rude about it. You're not raising your voice. You're not screaming at them. You just say, hey, I appreciate you giving my son the phone. However, this is something that we don't allow. And so I'm going to, give you your phone back, and just say, hey, thank you, but no thank you.
That's such a good way to say it.
And I think you're being direct. You're not being rude. But again, you're protecting that space. You're protecting that boundary that you set for yourself. Now, if that other person gets upset, gets frustrated, gets whatever, then again, that's where you have to do even further analysis and evaluate and say, okay, why? Why did you get upset? Not to them out loud. They're not trying to start an argument, but you have to internalize and say, why are they getting upset? Is this the best environment for me to be in?
And that's a good perspective, because we have had it where we did set that boundary, and then people, our parents have done it, make jokes and put the phone in front of Rhaegar. And even that is breaking the boundary. Like, I don't care if you're like, oh, he saw the phone. Oh, he's trying to grab the phone. I don't care if you're joking or if he didn't touch it. I don't want his focus to be on a phone. And I know this probably sounds like such a small thing, but if you look at kids nowadays and us, you look at him, that phone is glued to hands, and I just don't want that for our baby.
Listen.
It's a hard addiction. It's an addiction that you can't break.
Listen.
You haven't broken yet.
I'm just trying to be like Ash Ketchum and become the greatest trainer there ever was, right? Playing Pokemon Go. That's your face.
Not
but no
an
excuse. Listen, no excuse.
Go outside, teach Rhaegar to have an imagination, make him a Why don't you learn some cool crafting skills? Because no offense, not the handiest man around.
I'm not.
It's okay.
I'm not.
You could make him a Pokeball that opens. Didn't you just show me one that
I did.
was just made?
I did.
Wouldn't it have been cool if you created that?
Yeah, I guess. I don't have a 3D printer, though. That's how she did it.
Okay.
And I'm not very technological savvy like that.
But you could develop a skill, get some little plastic Pokemons, teach them to catch them outside. I'm just saying, there's ways.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'll be quiet now. Go.
No, but now I lost my train of thought.
Well, you were saying how even, with our parents...
That got me.
Even with our
parents,
even with our parents joking around with the phone,
mm-hmm.
and we were talking about
mm-hmm.
how you can still have that direct conversation and say, like, don't be joking around that way.
Yeah, so even that is breaking a boundary.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to acknowledge how the people are going to respond, because sometimes they respond passively
mm-hmm.
in that of making a joke when they either are offended, they didn't think they did anything wrong, or they think that's not a smart way to raise your kid. So that's also just something we've experienced, and we've had friends do it too, but I particularly noticed it within the family of jokes, which I know they're not doing anything malicious, but I think that's a boundary that we have to continue to keep as well. And I can kind of jokingly be like, haha, no, I'm going to throw your phone out the window. But I say it passively as well to go with their passive joke, but I really will throw their phone out the window if they keep giving it to them.
Yeah, and to that point, I think that you have to... I'll go backwards to go forwards. I said that it's okay to have that conversation, and if they if they're upset about it, then you go back, you internalize, and you think about, is that the best environment where you need to be? Listen, we're not... And I mean this, we're not helicopter parents by any means. We want Rhaegar to do a lot of things. But I think there is a time and an age and a place for those things. Mm-hmm. Like Lynn said, we do want him to have technology in his life. In fact, he needs to. It's part of society nowadays.
Yeah, but he could use it really greatly down the road.
Correct. But it could be for different things. And so we've thought of our plan, our parenting strategy for him as he grows up. So I told Lynn this the other day. I said, you realize, and this was prior to you telling me this conversation today, I said, do you realize, or are you ready, I think is how I said it, are you ready to be out and about with family, friends, with whomever, and upholding our boundaries? And she looked at me and she's like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, there's going to be times as he gets older, we'll go out to eat, and, we're getting better. I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say that we're perfect. We're not. We're very limiting on fast food. Like when we were doing 75 hard, we weren't having fast food at all. And we don't want Rhaegar to fall into that, and then because we don't have enough time to make, lunch or whatever, that, well, let's go get a McDonald's or let's go get a Burger King. We don't want that for him. We want him to eat well food. That's all he's ate since right now that we've introduced him to solid foods. He's just eating whole foods, organic foods, good foods. And that's what we want him to grow up on, right? He is going to get to a point, 18 years old, where he can legally, legally make his own decisions. At that point, if everything that we've taught him he disagrees with, then at that point he can disagree with it. He's his own man. And we understand that, right? We're not going to love him any less. But until that time comes, this is our parenting strategy, and this is what we've agreed on. This is what we're going to do. And if people have their differentiating opinions, that's okay. That's okay. This lifestyle, is going to come with adversity. This mentality, this way we're thinking, is going to come with adversity, and we're okay with that. And so, at least I am. I asked Lynn the other day, like I said, are you ready for that? And her response was no. Because she wasn't thinking that far ahead. She wasn't thinking of being in these situations out in public with friends, with family, and having to say, no, we're not doing that. This is my boundary. We're not doing that.
The first thing that came to mind is we go out on a play date with Rhaegar and some friends, and say the kids are like, let's go to ice cream afterwards. Am I going to tell him, no, don't have a McDonald's, like, vanilla cone? I don't know. I hope so. But it's hard to maintain those boundaries, and you have to be really disciplined.
Yeah.
And that's why in the verse, like, it says the world is not of God. You are an enemy if you are of the world. You are an enemy of God if you are of the world. And the world has a lot of temptations out there.
It does.
And is going in all different directions.
It does.
But is it going in the way that you want your kids to be raised in, that you want your family to do well in? Because we don't need those ice cream cones either.
Yeah.
But we grew up having them, so it's hard not to fall into that.
Yep, and that's you beat me to it. Thank you.
Yay.
That's what I forgot to say. You can't be hypocritical. You can't be hypocritical.
He can't say that because he says hippogriff when he means hypocrite, and so he doesn't even say hypocrite. It's a hard word.
The funny part there is Harry Potter is just my funny word. Being a hippogriff. It is. Yeah, a hippogriff is the animal.
Yeah.
But buckbeak. I always tell Lynn that instead of being a hypocrite, don't be a hippogriff. Yeah. That's where I get confused. Anyways, the key there, in everything that I said before, is don't be a hypocrite. Right? If we're saying Rhaegar cannot have fast food, or we don't want him to have fast food, we can't have fast food. Because if he sees us eating fast food, what's he going to say? Hypocrite. He may not know the word, but he'll be like, how come you get to do it and I don't?
Yeah.
Right? And so that is the hard part in the discipline as well. And that's what we have to continue to be good stewards and be on the same accord, so that way we're going on the right trajectory. We're going the right way. Because it's not fair to him if we say, you can't have fast food, or you can't have this ice cream, or you can't have this candy. Meanwhile, we're sitting there stuffing our faces with that.
Well, it can go into so many more. This can vary into so many other topics, but it also that makes it look like you don't hold your values and morals to standards, and then it's gonna get him questioning. Okay, then if they can be lax in their diet, if it's okay to have this, then is that for religion?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have to say grace every time because, you're not keeping consistency. And the whole idea around your morals and how you're raising your kids and your belief system is broken at that point, because your kids are going to be questioning it. You question each other even. Like you said, you said you want to be in shape, working out, eating well. But you just said your last cheat meal is In-N-Out for the third day in a row. Okay.
True story.
But so do you not hold up those standards? Like it can corrupt all of the beliefs, honestly.
Yeah, and I told Lynn this the other day because she just called me out on it, and I'll confirm it. Right now, Rhaegar isn't remembering this time of his life, right? Unless he's Sheldon Cooper. He's not remembering.
That'd be so cool, though.
He's not remembering this time of his life. So in my head, I'm like, well, I can still.
It was a Drizzly Tuesday. Sorry.
In my head, I'm like, I can still get away with it. I can still go get a McDonald's. He's not recognizing it. But no, the reality is, I need to break those bad habits now to not be a hypocrite, to stick to my word, right?
Yeah.
And so we've had this discussion many times, as she just said, and I keep failing. But that's where I need to do the work internally, and I need to say, no, the devil is a lie. This I'm not doing anymore because I want to go to the next level. I want to set the good example for my family, for them to follow, for them to be able to lead by example, right? So that's where now, this week has been good. This week has been good. So a week at a time, a day at a time, a week at a time, a month at a time. That's how you win it. As one of my good friends says, that's how you win the day.
That's good. It is how you win the day. You have to have those little wins, like Alec, or bringing it back to the very beginning. He said the little wins of the day of going on his walks, like making the bed right when you wake up. Yep, they do compound.
They compound.
Yeah, and that's where we're at. Really trying to set those boundaries. Is we need to start little. I need to start better at just communicating and starting little and work our way to where when Rhaegar is aware of things happening, we have those boundaries set, we have those beliefs and morals set, and we can have a better influence on him so he won't feel shaken by his beliefs because they're sturdy and strong and we have structure in our family.
Correct. That makes sense. I think that boundaries is a topic that we'll continue talking about throughout this journey because it's extensive. There's a lot to cover today. I would say we covered about, we barely started scratching the surface level of it. But it's an important topic because I think it's something that, and as you see, we struggle with it, right? Yeah. I assume that there's people out there, you guys, that struggle with it as well. And so this is part of the journey, right? This is part of improving and getting better, is understanding where those areas of opportunity are and then making those pivots, making those adjustments, and then just shooting forward for trajectory in the right direction, right? This is where you want to shatter those limits and you want to ascend. Perfect, Lynn. So then from here, I would say we can wrap this up and then we'll do our peaks and valleys. That's something we haven't done yet.
Oh, yeah. We're so bad about that. See, we need to set a routine, too. That's our goals.
I had it in my mind. The way we started the conversation,
it just didn't
it flowed. And so I was like, you know what? You lead this one. I'll eventually put it in there. But
okay. Well, then we can do it beginning or end. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter as long as we get it done. Making those pivots.
Yes. So what are your peaks and valleys? You go first because I always go first.
Okay, fair enough. Let's see. Peaks for this week, I've touched upon it already, is being disciplined and actually starting my health path again. I'm so funny. And this is where I get mad at myself. I mentioned that we've done 75 hard. For me, I did 100 days hard because Lynn had failed and I continued, and then when I finished 75 hard, she was still going through it, and I continued to do it to support her, so I ended up doing, I think, 102 days straight. But it's funny, when my mind is in game mode, when my mind is in that mindset of I'm in a competition, I'm in a challenge, I'm disciplined, I get it done, I find a way. It could be 11:30 at night, and we're still, reading those 10 pages, or I'm still chugging that water, whatever it is. The second the challenge is over, it's like my mind goes, okay, you're done. And I go back to bad habits. And that is the hardest thing for me to break, being honest. So for me, the peak this week, is that I've started that trajectory. And I'm going to just let those little wins compound. And we're going to get better and we're going to get better. So that's my peak. Too. I ate healthy too, right? I ate healthy too. I'm kicking up a modified version of the carnivore diet. I really felt really good when I did that diet. I did it for a month straight. And just strictly meat, water, or animal produce, and felt really good. I do miss my veggies. I do, believe it or not. I do miss my veggies, and I do miss my fruit. So I've kind of, again, it's not a true carnivore diet, but I modified it for myself right now. I'm doing about 90-95% meat throughout the day, and then I'm doing the fruits and veggies at the very beginning of the day. Or no later than lunch, and I'm very, very limiting on my carb intake, like bread and things like that. So, Lynn, I won't be having a lot of your bread anymore. I apologize.
That's sad because I just made a lavender lemon loaf and a blueberry lemon loaf.
Here's where the test begins because that sounds amazing. So, yeah, I'm happy that we're going in the right direction. And as far as my valley, let's see. I would say my valley for this week was my lack of schedule, lack of preparedness caused me to miss out on getting tasks done in a timely manner. What I mean by that is, I'll use the example I used earlier. A bunch of books over here, Bible, prepared. Blank space here. Not that I'm not prepared, but I could prepare more. And so I get it in my head that I don't have to write things down. I get it in my head that I don't have to put in the work and it's just I can do it naturally, or I'm all this gifted person who is just going to, boom, I just do it and it's done. I get it in my head that I can do that. And it's, you know what that's called? That's called ego. It's ego and it's arrogance by my part. And so I've noticed that I need to write things down. If I write things down, I do better. If I make a little checklist or I use my phone to make a checklist or whatever, my computer, it really helps me out because it helps me prioritize what those 5 tasks should be. I've talked about Andy Frisella in the past, so I'll mention him again. We both listen to his podcast a lot, and we get a lot of good knowledge and a lot of information from it. And so recently, the episode that I was listening to recently, he went back and talked about those 5 critical tasks, right? So you write down your day, right? If you plan for your day, you have to write down those 5 critical tasks that have to get done. And you want to do those at the beginning of the day because it's when you have the most energy, it's when you're most alert, it's when you just get things done. And so I've started to pivot and learn that if I write my list down and I put 20 things, I get overwhelmed and I'm like, no, I'm not doing it anymore. But if I write my list down and I put 5 things, it makes that bite so much more manageable. And it makes me feel really good accomplishing those tasks. So my valley is that I did not do that this week, causing me to just be all over the place. And that's something that I need to get better at, and where I'm going to ask for your help because you're really good at that.
I make a good to-do list, and his procrastination isn't the best either, so that adds up and falls on top of that, whereas I like to get everything done way before the deadline, so I will definitely help you.
Thank you.
I like doing that.
Thank you.
I like getting things done. It is the most satisfying thing, crossing or checking a task off a list.
I moved her checklist one day, and I could hear her from downstairs. She's like, Alex! I was like, what? She's like, where's my checklist? And I was like, oh, I moved it over there. She's like, don't move my checklist. She got pissed off.
I always have it ready I write it the day before and have it out and ready on my desk for that day. Yeah. So I know what I have to do.
Yeah.
But I think that's why I get so much out of my hours during the day because I get so many things done.
You do.
So
you do.
I'm a pro checklist person.
You do.
My peaks and valleys, I would say my peak is making all my sourdough. It's just been a week of sourdough.
You had one of your starters explode.
Yeah, all over. It did. All over the place. So then it was all over my clothes, all over the floor. It was an adventure. But I made so much bread. I made sandwich bread, banana loaf, banana nut bread loaf, the lemon lavender loaf, lemon blueberry loaf for a second time.
Good. Oh my goodness.
We're taking it to some friends this weekend, so they're gonna hopefully like it. I made a focaccia bread. I made a bunch of just normal sourdoughs that I gave away.
And you made the crackers, crackers.
Oh, I made rosemary sea salt crackers too. That I made like a huge batch of those because Alex ate all of the first batch, so then I made like a triple batch.
Yeah.
Because I had too much starter. If anyone wants some starter, come to me. I'll give you some starter.
And you never know. I told Lynn the other day, maybe we need to make Envision Growth Bakery. You never know.
I need some good paperwork for that, but we can try. But that's my peak. My valley would be, I just feel like I've been really busy, so I haven't been as present with Rhaegar, and so the times where I am present, he's napping. So I can't really enjoy my time with him. Or he's been, like last night, he's really rough with sleep. He's in pain. So it's more of the nurturing side and not really the playing side right now for a mom.
Correct. That makes sense. Fair enough. Well, I hope that things start getting better for you in terms on the valley side. Anything that I can do to help, let me know.
Thank you.
But yeah, no, I appreciate the time spent together today. I appreciate the conversation we had. Thank you all for your continued support. It really means a lot to us. Remember, you can find our social media links in the description. Ask us questions. I need to be better about managing our social media. I will be honest. There's a lot more room for me to grow there. And to Lynn's point, I do spend sometimes too much time on my personal Instagram when really I should be focusing that time and dedicating that time to our podcast Instagram and helping that grow and just being more interactive. So that's one of my goals, one of my tasks for this week. So hold me to it. Keep me honest. But yeah, if you have any questions, if there's questions that you'd like us to answer, something that we didn't get to, please send us a message. Or if there's some way that we can pray for you, please let us know. We'd love to do that. But other than that, we appreciate the time spent with us. We'll see you guys next week. So go out there, shatter your limits, and ascend. Let's go.
Bye, guys.